This is a sermon for March 12th, 2023. And I want to talk about the woman at the well. And I titled it, What Does Living Water Mean for You or to You? And I think it's an important question because I think we've celebrated the idea of Jesus giving living water without having a concrete a notion of what it means. So that's what I want to look at today. So first I'm going to read from John 4, 1 through 52. This is a long passage, so I'm going to read through it, and then I'm going to make comments on it, and then I'm going to summarize. So John 4. Jesus realized that the Pharisees had posted the score of followers John and Jesus had, that Jesus was ahead. This turned him and John into rivals in the eyes of the people. So Jesus left the Judean countryside and went back to Galilee. To get there, he had to pass through Samaria. He came into a Samaritan village. Jacob's well was still there. Jesus, worn out by the trip, sat down at the well. It was noon. A woman, a Samaritan, came to draw water. Jesus said, "Would you give me a drink of water?" His disciples had gone to the village to buy food for lunch. The Samaritan woman, taken aback, said, "How come you, a Jew, are asking me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink?" Jews in those days wouldn't be caught dead talking to Samaritans. Jesus answered, "If you knew the generosity of God and who I am, you would be asking me for a drink, and I would give you fresh, living water." The woman said, "Sir, you don't even have a bucket to draw with, and this well is deep. So how are you going to get this living water? Are you a better man than our ancestor Jacob, who dug this well and drank from it, he and his sons and livestock, and passed it down to us?" Jesus said, "Everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again and again. Anyone who drinks the water I give will never thirst, not ever. The water I give will be an artesian spring within, gushing fountains of endless life." The woman said, "Sir, give me this water so I won't ever get thirsty, won't ever have to come back to this well again." And then Jesus tells the woman's story, which I've not included here. The woman said, "Oh, so you're a prophet. Well, tell me this. Our ancestors worshipped God at this mountain, but you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place for worship, right?" Jesus said, "Believe me, the time is coming when all will worship in spirit and in truth. It's who you are, the way you live, that count before God. The kind of people God is looking for are those who are authentic before God. God is being itself, spirit. Those who worship will do it out of their very being, their spirits, their true selves." The woman said, "I don't know about that. I do know that the Messiah is coming. When he arrives, we'll get the whole story." "I am he," said Jesus. "You don't have to wait any longer or look any further." Just then, Jesus' disciples came back. They were shocked. They couldn't believe he was talking with a Samaritan and a woman. No one said what they were thinking, but their faces showed it. Back in the village, she told the people, "Come see a man who told my story to me, who knows me inside and out. Do you think this could be the Messiah?" And they went out to see for themselves. Many of the Samaritans from that village followed Jesus because of the woman's witness. They asked him to stay on, so Jesus stayed 2 days. Many more followed Jesus. They said to the woman, "We're no longer taking this on your say-so. We've heard it for ourselves and know he's the Messiah." Well, this is an amazing story. I know I say that pretty much every week, but it really is. If you spend time with it, and I love it out of the message because it feels fresh and new to me in a way that opens it for us. So this is my commentary on it. So Jesus realized that the Pharisees had posted the score, the number of followers that John and Jesus had, and that Jesus was ahead. And so, Jesus left the Judean countryside, and to get there, he passed through Samaria. So the opening passage seems to be an intro explaining why the Jewish Jesus found himself in Samaria. Otherwise, Jewish men traveled far out of their way to avoid Samaria. Jesus did not avoid Samaria. Most Jewish men would hold their nose and say, ew, whenever they thought of Samaria. When do people in our culture avoid things, avoid people they don't like, avoid an area that they don't like? So the Jewish people were on top in this domino thing, and the Samaritans were on the underneath side of this power structure. But Jesus just walked straight into Samaria. So he comes to the Samaritan village, and Jacob's well is still there. What's so interesting, two things about this part. Jesus, worn out by the trip, sat down at the well. It was noon. A Samaritan woman, came to draw water. Would you give me a drink of water? Jesus asks. The Samaritans area claimed Jacob's well. Jacob and Jacob's well. Remember, this is Jewish, solidly Jewish heritage, but the Samaritans claimed it as their own. And the Jewish authorities did not extend this attitude towards Samaria. So, of course, the woman was surprised. Jesus answered, and this is at the heart of it. Jesus answered, if you knew the generosity of God and who I am, you would be asking me for a drink. See, Jesus had just asked the woman for a drink. You would be asking me for a drink, and I would give you fresh, living water. What does this mean? What does this mean? There's such a great playfulness between the woman taking it literally, which, we don't know if the woman took it literally or not. This is the story that John tells about this encounter to help us understand. So the woman goes back and forth between understanding it spiritually and taking it literally. And Jesus goes back and forth too, saying, if you really knew the generosity of God. Remember, Jewish men had nothing to do with the Samaritans, and especially Samaritan women, because there was no generosity of God toward the Samaritans. And Jesus turns that upside down and says, oh, if only you knew the generosity of God, you would ask me for a drink and I would give you living water. It's so amazing. And there's great humor, back and forth, back and forth. It's almost like a tennis match if you read it kind of looking at it like that. Yeah, it's a reversal of who's generous. So Jesus is asking for the generosity of the woman and then says, oh, if only you knew the generosity of God. Well, the Samaritans didn't see much generosity of God. They certainly didn't see any generosity of Jewish men. So, yeah, it's humorous. And the woman said, sir, you don't even have a bucket to draw with. The well is deep. How are you going to get this living water? And, if you had to walk miles and miles to carry water back, which they do, the women do in Africa all the time. And if you had to do that, you would also want living water, which is what we do. We turn on a tap, the water's there. Hot or cold, what do you want? We take it for granted. I remember hearing a story about Africans that came to the U.S., and they had lived in a village where the women had to walk and walk and walk and carry the water miles. And when they got into the apartment, they would turn the water on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, because they couldn't believe it. They'd never seen anything like that. That is just so great. And so here's the Samaritan woman saying, are you better than our ancestors? She's claiming the Jewish heritage solidly, which also is just delightful. The Jewish men would have said, you lousy Samaritans don't get to claim Jacob as your great-grandfather. How dare you? And it was a fight that the Samaritans always lost. And so Jesus says, everyone who drinks of this water will get thirsty again. And I see I'm running short on time, so I'm going to cut to the chase here. Everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again. What in your life do you partake of that doesn't satisfy for long? It satisfies short term, and then you want more. And it's almost like you never had it. What works like that? How much does the love of God work like that? And I just wanted to say, too, I've been to the artesian spring water in Winslow. And you have to hold your container solidly because the water just constantly is flowing out of this thing. It's thick. It's like that, it's really thick. The water's just pouring out of that so strong that you have to hold the container solidly or it'll knock it out of your hands. That is an artesian spring, and I just love it. And my husband and I did a blind taste test, and the artesian water was better than Davis water. And Davis water, I think, is great. So that was funny that we both did the blind taste test and liked that water. I still don't drive there all the time to get it, but isn't that wonderful? So then the woman is saying, oh, so you're a prophet. And, it's like a tennis match. And then she asks a philosophical question or a theological question, which is very sophisticated. Where is it appropriate to worship God? And then she's contrasting the Jewish view with the Samaritan view. And Jesus says, again, if you knew that generosity of God, you would know that everyone can worship in spirit or in truth. This is living water. This is the living water. You don't have to be a certain way. All you have to do is be alive, to have the dignity of all humans who have dignity. And God meets you there with generosity and says, you can worship as you are, as you understand, and that God accepts that. So here are just a few things I loved about the story. There's a lot in it that I absolutely love. I love how the story begins with simple human needs. Jesus is tired, thirsty, he's resting, and needs a drink of water. She's there because she and her household have needs. She has a curious mind. This is the second thing I love about it. She asks philosophical and theological questions, and Jesus takes her seriously, doesn't dismiss her, takes it all seriously. She's bold. She asks very pointed questions of a Jewish man. Whew! You don't do that when you're a Samaritan woman. You don't ask pointed, blunt questions of a Jewish man. And she's not meek or quiet. I love that about her too. She wants to know what's different or what's wrong with Jesus that he would speak to a Samaritan woman. All right, 3. I love that she's a woman and she's a theologian. In those days? Really? And part of that is John's writing of the drama. Part of it is because she did know a lot. She had great insight. So I love that about it too. And the last thing I want to highlight about it is John wants us to understand in this very vivid story that we are also invited to receive the living water as a gift of God. We want to receive the gift of Jesus in our lives. No matter our story, we can find ourselves loved by God, changed by the love of God. Now, what does living water look like to you? I have realized that hunger can be satisfied, and it's not long till you're hungry again, right? And you can have mouth hunger, and you can have stomach hunger, and you can have appetite hunger, and you can have stimulation hunger, and hunger comes again. We eat, and the hunger's satisfied, but not for long. I've been learning about hunger. Now, what else in your life is hunger, and then brief satisfaction, and then hunger again, and when are you thirsty? And it's satisfied, and then you're thirsty again. I want you to be able to answer that for yourselves. I think we forget the love of God. I think we forget what it is to be transformed by the love of God. How can we live into it? I think meditation and mindfulness are important to live into it. Observing ourselves are important for living into the love of God in my life in a concrete way. We learn about this as we tell the stories of our lives and as we join in community together. That is what is deeply satisfying. Not just coming to church and hearing a sermon, because you go home and you're hungry again. I bet it doesn't take long at all. Then you have no idea what the sermon was about, because the sermon is just a sermon. How do we tell each other our stories, and how does community meet the deep need? Amen.